Schools of all levels this year had a wrench thrown in their plans. They had to adapt to new standards and regulations put out for them, and many moved online in some capacity. Universities were faced with a similar question. Do we send our students back to campus, or do we do instruction from home? While all universities took different measures, 61% of universities did bring students back on campus. This included 20% who'd have all in-person classes and 16% who are doing a mixture of online and in-person classes. Now, all universities were faced with different circumstances when it came to reopening. They have different enrollment sizes. They're in different cities that may have been affected differently by the virus. They might have had to adapt living arrangements differently. So they took different measures. Some tested all their students before they arrived on campus. Some just had a mask and social distancing rule, and while some had a 2-week quarantine period in dorms at the beginning of the semester. And because of this, there were different immediate results across the country based on schools. Across the country, there were 88,000 so far positive cases on college campuses, including over 60 deaths. In some cities have seen large surges in the rise of cases when students came back on campus. For example, Notre Dame and University of North Carolina Chapel Hill had to close in-person classes at the beginning of the semester due to large surges when students returned to campus. And over 150 schools have had over 100 cases, and many large schools like Kentucky have had well over 1,000 cases. And while administrations will tell you that they're doing everything in the best interest of the students, it's a little more nuanced than that. The reality is that they took into account safety, but college-age students are at minimal risk without pre-existing conditions to be harmed in any severe fashion by the virus. So universities understood that when they bring students back on campus, there'll be lots of positive cases, they would still be able to push through. But the one thing that they couldn't push through is the economic hit that they would get from not having students on campus. Without students on campuses, universities don't get money from housing, they don't get money from food, they don't get money from sports, and without this, they would be bleeding cash, and many universities would have to close. And so their hand was almost forced in this matter to bring students back. And cities had a very similar issue. Many residents were fearful of having students come back and live in their towns and cause surges of cases, but the reality was that many businesses in towns rely on students for revenue. And so while I think that it's good to have students back on campus and it was the right move if you can contain it to a campus, experts are fearful that bringing students back on campus could lead to another surge of cases in November when students go home for Thanksgiving. Because not only are students exposing themselves and people their age to the virus, they're also exposing elderly, grandparents, family and friends with pre-existing conditions. And this is accentuated with family gatherings around the holiday season. This could be the negative unintended consequences of bringing students back on campus. So while it's been interesting to study the reasons why schools had to reopen and the different procedures that they took and different results because of it, the one thing to keep a close eye on going forward is how bringing students back on campus is going to affect our communities across the country.